2, 1. Hey guys, how you doing? Good to see you again. Sorry for the big break with COVID and a lot of traveling. We couldn't get a lot of people in, but just wanted to let you know, 22nd through the 25th, we got the World Championships coming back to Morehead City. Thank you so much, Morehead City, Jeff McCann, and the whole staff. That is crazy to pull a month-and-a-half turnaround, and especially during COVID. We appreciate it. That is amazing, and we appreciate it. We appreciate your city and everyone involved. But today we have Steve Adams, Throttleman of Jersey Outlaw and Ammo Camo. Thanks for being here, buddy.
Thank you for having me.
I appreciate it, man. We've been trying to get this done for a while. It's good to finally get in here.
It's been back and forth, but with, like you said, the traveling and everything, and it took a little extra effort, but we're here.
We finally got it done.
Yeah.
Nobody knows, but we had you up in race control with us for Morehead. I appreciate the help. And then
I don't believe you let that out.
Yeah, man. Actually got you wearing a suit and tie. But then I went out to California for 2 weeks, which was awesome, but good to finally be in here doing this.
Yeah.
But so I heard you got the old Scarab back.
Well, I always had it, but
Think you can put it back together?
It's back in its secret location.
Come on, let's do it right now so you can't back out. Let's put it back together.
Who knows?
Maybe we even get Good, Bad, and Ugly back.
Oh boy. Well, Ugly's sitting right here, so it's all good.
Well, for everybody that doesn't know, so you ran that 30 Scarab as a Larry Smith in Class 4 against the likes of Saris and Jim Simmons back in the day, and more recently ran the Ammo Camo, the 30 Canopied Scarab, in Class 4 as well with your partner Joey Maglino.
Yes.
So what are you thinking, man? What are you thinking? You think you're going to come back out?
Oh, it's such a hard decision. We love the old boat mostly. That there's really no beating that boat. The new boat was full of new challenges between all the work getting to set it back up again, because it was really set wrong from the get-go. We obviously had a few spin issues here and there, which wasn't bad in the boat, but for people watching, it provides a lot of excitement. So, and then the other issue is a single competing with twin engine boats is just there's no competition.
It's a major handicap.
Exactly.
Yeah. So when you get two props pushing and two skegs turning, you really need it. But not to jump over the old boat. I mean, I understand. I got it hanging behind me on the wall for a reason. That's people don't understand the sentiment that comes with those old race boats.
Oh my God, it's just classic. There's no explaining it, because I can't even explain it. When I picked that boat up, I had no clue what I was doing. Absolutely none. It was a good deal, which all boats are, and then getting involved in building a race boat. Anthony built two motors that were just unbelievable, durable as all. The issues we had were the drives. They couldn't take the power of the motors, so we were going through drives way too quick. But with all that being said, it was still an incredible boat. Turning on a dime, don't even have to lay off the throttles. It just turned at 85.
That boat had an awesome attitude too.
Yes.
Like, I particularly remember one year in Atlantic City. You were back probably a half a lap. I don't remember if you had a mechanical problem or what exactly was going on, or if you were just giving Johnny the day off. But it seemed like you hit the go switch, man. And that thing could pick up an attitude in like 6 footers like no other V-bottom.
Yes.
It reminded me seriously of the Viper. It really, really ran well. It'd be cool to see that project start again. Yeah. Get that back out on the race course.
I love it. It's an awesome boat, and I don't know. Time will tell.
At the end of the day, it's a shout out to Larry Smith.
Oh my God!
The
absolutely.
Guy. There's another one. There's Rum Runners. Fran Bell running in Class 6. That's another dominator in the big water.
Absolutely.
It's a real testament to his product.
Absolutely.
They're fantastic. But I want to get to, before we get too far ahead of ourselves, the reason why you're in. Right now, there's so much craziness going on in the world. And I just thought there'd be nobody better than you to help us through this. Kind of coach some people along and maybe help right some wrongs.
Is there a song about that?
I think there is. Okay. You want to sing it for us?
I'm a bad singer.
Come on. But why don't you roll through? I mean, some of the some of your titles, some of your experiences over the years? Let the people know.
Okay, so this is like a bit of a deviation from the typical podcast where we're talking about offshore and the history and things we've done, both smart and more stupid, But with the type of background, the reason why you'd asked me to come and basically talk was what I lived through and my experiences prior to boat racing. And I actually retired from the police in 2011, which I had been racing for a few years before I retired. So I'm grateful for the career that I had and the experience that I had, because if I look back on it, it's just like, how did that even happen? And it happened in a blink of an eye, because I'm an old dude now. And looking back, working for a vacation type police department, where we have the vacation crowds, and it's all along the Jersey Shore. The summers are crazy. Winters are more dead. Like I say dead, there's just nobody around. But the worst things happen in the winter because nobody's around. It's just kind of weird the way the world works that way. In the summer, it's a bunch of drunks trying to steal bikes to get home. It's
Right.
really stupid stuff. So being in a department that focuses on its vacation community and then the year-round community to keep the businesses going, you end up looking to, what am I going to do in this department for the next 25 years? And I kind of was directed into the firearms world of policing, going through different training with firearms instructor and then getting on the SWAT team, going through having literally the best leader that anyone could ever have, John Halbison, for the first generation of the SWAT team. It was crazy and pretty much unbelievable, but we learned the strongest foundation that anybody could ever be taught. And that's a credit to John and what he did.
Right. And you said in the beginning there, the police department that you worked for was sleepy in the winter, but that's when all the big crime goes on.
Oh, yeah.
And I lived over there for a winter. It's extremely desolate. Mm-hmm. And it's a strange thing, because you're not just a cop at that point. You're kind of an investigator as well. I mean, you remembering faces, remembering cars, remembering who lives there, who doesn't, And so how did that translate? How did that base translate to things that you eventually led to in your career? I mean, as far as going up, as far as SWAT to some of your other accomplishments, I mean, did that help you to have that mindset right in the beginning?
Everything helped, because right from the beginning, I never wanted to be a cop. I was like, it was not in a plan. I grew up in construction, and that was the plan at the moment, was to continue in construction. And then one of the buddies I grew up with, who was a member of the Ship Bottom Police Department, John Reed, called me and said, they're hiring. Why don't you go try? So I'm like, I don't know, I guess I'll try. And the next thing I know, I was hired. The rest is history. Going forward, once I got the job, I'm like, well, I guess if I qualified and got this job, maybe I could do something better, like go into the state police or go into some larger police department where there's more room to go around, and I'm thinking where I could learn more. And at that point, it was about, I was hired in 89, so then about 91, 92, somewhere in there, I'm thinking, let's try state police or some New Jersey State Police or somewhere else that's a larger department. And that's when affirmative action really kicked in. State police had a hiring freeze. All the police agencies wanted more minorities and more women in the force. So being a white guy, you're not going to get hired. And that was the reality. So I'm like, well, now let's go. I'm here, so let's do things. I got on the SWAT team in '93, and the way it was back then, there was very little money. So our chief put it to the 4 guys who wanted to be on the SWAT team, and it was 3/4 Stafford, and us 4 would go to the Stafford it was ESU, Emergency Services Unit at that point, and we had to buy everything, like our vests, our helmets, like everything. The department wasn't going to furnish anything for us, and I'm thinking, well, here's my opportunity to make myself better, and I'm investing in myself. So I'm like, fine. If he's going to say, yeah, you can go do it, but you got to buy everything, I'm all for it. And to me, that's the way all police should be, because you need to invest in yourself, in both equipment and training, in order to better yourself. And the majority of police, from the time that I was in and watching now, it's even worse, do not invest in themselves. They expect their towns to do everything for them, and that's the worst thing in the world. That's why we're seeing a lot of bad things, because politics has infected policing. It's infected everything, and it's causing big problems. And instead of tackling the problems, people are just arguing about it in circles, and it's not going anywhere.
Right. So now, from '93, when you got in the SWAT team, you spoke a lot about investing in yourself. Now, you did a lot of training outside of the SWAT team to better yourself for that position. Was any of that required, or was that something that you took on the chin?
It was everything we did was on the chin.
Right.
Everything.
So,
own time and dime. That's what it was. Our leader John brought in. He had friends who were SEALs, friends who were Delta, and then it's like late '94-ish, maybe early '95. He had met an Israeli, Gilad Jacobson, who came in to train our SWAT team, basically on the way Israelis did things, and it was unique, incredible, eye-opening. The way the Israelis trained and still train is they train the individual, and then once the individual's strong, then they bring them all together. So as a team, we were separated and went through this training program that he had. And once we passed those individual tests, then he started bringing us in small group, like a 2-man team, a 4-man team, and built. So we were fairly good up to that point, but once we went through that, which took about 1.5 years, and then on and off for longer than that, we became like crazy trusting in each other, incredibly fast. If I made a mistake, which I made a couple mistakes, like say we're in the stack and I get out of the stack for a stupid reason, the man behind me sees me get out of the stack and he takes my spot. And it just works right down the stack that way, versus, oh, well, he's out, now what do I do? There was no questioning. Everybody on the team was trained in everything. Like, every man was able to breach. Every man, there was no assignments. Like, you're the breacher, I'm gonna do this, you're gonna do that. It wasn't, the assignments were very loose, and it was easy to pick up if need be.
which wouldn't that just make sense that the guys on the team were all kind of their own Swiss Army knife? I mean, the I don't know what the correct term for it is, but the particular training that you see today, where you get trained in one particular area to be a specialist or to be it doesn't jive correctly when you put it all together. It seems like it jives great on paper to have specialists everywhere, but it seems like there's very few jobs that really require a specialist, whereas I'd rather have that Swiss Army knife of a guy who's had experience in all of these situations and knows what to do in all of these different situations.
Yeah.
And it's funny when you see the way things go down today, when you see these videos that come out, of quite frankly horrible policing. As a police officer, you're able to identify the problem. As a SWAT member, you're able to identify the problem. The public is relying on a very faulty media to tell them what was going on. And so that's one of the things I was very intrigued to have you on today, was to find out more about some of those situations and how, and you did already touch on it, how the team aspect of your version of policing versus the 2020 version of policing, how different that was and how you guys were close. You know, I was curious to kind of get at that.
As far as where things are now versus...
Well, and the major difference there. I mean, when you see, for instance, the one that I think a lot of people would be able to easily reference is the kid in the hallway with the guy. I believe they were regular police officers, but they had AR-15s.
Right.
And the guy was already on the ground and
Yeah.
basically apprehended already at that point, and you know, completely unjustifiably lost his life. You know, and I think everybody saw that video, and it was this was in the beginning of this onslaught of police hatred, and that was to me the first one where you couldn't make an argument. Where does that start? Does that start from your leader, or does that start at the individual not investing in themselves?
It's a combination of both, because the leader has to somehow, like my leader at the time who said, yeah, you can be on a SWAT team, but you got to do this. And I was like, I'm going to do it. He didn't come out and fully encourage those actions, but I saw an opportunity. So today's police need to see opportunities, and they also need to see lessons. So in that case, there's a leadership failure, because those police were never placed, and this is my opinion, were never placed in a pressure situation like you see there, because the officer yelling at the man in his underwear is creating more stress and creating an atmosphere where the person who they're telling what to do, yelling orders at, can't understand that. And the police don't understand that the person doesn't understand. So if he goes to reach to pull his underwear up because he's afraid they're going to fall off, then he gets shot for that. So is that exactly what happened? I don't know. It kind of looks like that. So there's training failures across the board in police. A ton of them are because police will not train on their own time and dime, like I had said previously. And it's critical. You have to, if you're going to take a job like that, like policing, law enforcement, especially today, where your life is on the line, you can't stop it being like, well, I'm just doing this to serve my community and for the honor of my community. You can't do that. You have to take everyone who surrounds you into consideration, because when your life is taken away, when you could have trained to either prevent or prohibit or stop that somehow, where you could have done that, but you didn't, and now you're gone, all those ripples go out to the family, and you're gone, but your family is the ones who's suffering from that. So you today as an officer really need to actively pursue quality training, and there's people out there who are more than qualified. There's a lot of crap out there. There's more crap than not, where they're looking to really make money. And you know, you have to kind of sift through those things. So a cop should ask themselves, what are the chances here? Okay, first, if you're given a taser, okay, I'm given a taser, I'm supposed to be like, I got this taser, I'm safe now. You're made to believe that, okay? I never carried a taser. They were still illegal by the time I retired, so that wasn't the case. But there's a ton of officers who carry tasers. There's a ton of videos all over the place where cops use tasers and they fail. And it's documented that 50% of taser use fails. So how can you be carrying around a taser on your back belt and believe that that's going to save you out of something when 50% of the time it's documented they fail, and you have taken no time whatsoever to learn any type of fight training? Because the chances of you getting into some hand-to-hand something, resistance, is extremely high.
Well, it's basically 50%, right? I mean, you're saying 50% of tasers are failures.
Just from that,
Right.
just from the taser. Now let's add in pepper spray. So you try to tase somebody, you're on the bad 50%. So now what do? All right, because most cops aren't trained in any type of combatives, now they go to their gun because they don't know what to do. So again, training failure. The police need to realize that they need to actually put their ego in check and go out and get beat up.
Right,
really.
be humbled.
Yes.
Well, and not to interrupt you there, but something you said there, it makes a lot of sense, is the fight training, right? Some sort of combat and some sort of martial art, even just the discipline that comes with that would help a lot of these police officers. But particularly the non-lethal tools that you guys have on your belt, right? Like a OC spray, like you see so commonly now, or a taser spray, or a taser, or it's not 100%. It should be a fallback option when your life is in danger, right? And the reason why you're using something like that is because your life is not in danger, right? I mean, if it was, you'd be using your pistol.
Yes.
And so if you had some training, which you do, right? And I do believe, I don't know to what extent your knowledge in jiu-jitsu is, right? But you've seen a big push for this lately. A lot of people want they've been putting up the blue line flag with a blue jiu-jitsu belt.
Yeah.
You need to get these cops in jiu-jitsu, get them to where they get their ass kicked every once in a while, and realize what it's like. And but the flip side of that is, when you run into a situation where you would go for your taser, or you would go for your pepper spray or your nightstick, or you would kind of pull guard there and bring this guy down to the ground, bring him into your world,
right,
and put him in handcuffs. I mean, your job, something that you would be very capable of doing. Why isn't there anyone at the top in the brass letting this come down the chain, that these guys need to be toughened up a little bit? These guys need to be more precise.
It's that question can be answered over decades of degradation of the police. Like the big movement right now is defund the police. What people don't understand is the police have been defunded over the past 3 decades.
Right.
That perfect example is...
One second for me. Just sneak that microphone up a little bit. I'm starting to lose you. There you go.
Sorry about that.
Twist that knob real hard. Like to when you're going to... Yep. There you go. It should stay for you now. Golden.
Okay.
So sorry. Defund the police. They've been defunded.
They've already been defunded. Now it's really echoey.
It's okay. It's going to bounce in your headphones a little bit. It's hard to get used to.
Okay. So they've already been defunded. And a perfect example of that is my chief telling me, all right, you and the other guys can go on the SWAT team, but you have to buy everything yourself because we don't have the money for it.
Don't you only call the SWAT team in dire situations?
It depends. It's all in policies and procedures of departments.
But for the most part, it's high stress. It's a reaction force at the end of the day. No.
We were proactive.
Right.
And that's with whether it's drug raids, hostages, barricaded people. Well, when you run down the list, we ran during a time where the vast majority of our warrants were no-knock warrants, where you see guys busting doors down. So in the early years, that's kind of like, okay, you bust a door down. As time goes on, you learn and you evolve as a team, which we did, where you find out that in our community, 50% of the people don't even lock their doors. So what are you busting the door down? Because it's unlocked. Right. So before we would bust the door down, you just check the knob. If it's open, you walk in. So there's no need for the ram to break a door down.
Right.
We got away from the ram very early because it's a big, heavy thing, 70 pounds, 80 pounds, whatever it is, 2 hands with the handles. It's a big thing. And we went to a 25-pound dumbbell because it's something that you can use with one hand. You can actually hold your handgun in the other hand if you really, if you need to. It's something that after you break the door in, when it's locked,
You can get rid of it.
You can just drop it easily. You never lose control of it, and it worked 100% of the time. Now, I have told a few people since I've been retired what we used to use, and they laugh. It's like, all right, well, you laugh away, but that's what we used, and it worked every single time.
Right.
So there's so many different things going on. Like, okay, guys laughing because we used a 25-pound dumbbell to break a door down. Like, why would you even laugh? Why don't you be like, well, hey, maybe I should try that.
Right.
Versus the RAM.
Which goes right back to being a little humble.
Humble is massive in policing. Massive.
And I guess really the real word is humility.
Humility in life is everything. When we went to the SWAT World Champions, there were 2 levels. Okay, so our team won in 2007, 2008, and it wasn't just a win, it was a absolute crushing, like crushed the competition.
Well, and just before we go right through that, explain that a little bit, what the World Championships are. For not many people know that there's championships for a SWAT.
Yeah, there's I guess there's contests all the time. Okay, so back then it was put on by Original SWAT. And they had all these advertisers, and there was a lot of money in it, and a lot of gifts given to the winners of the different events. So throughout the events, it kind of worked in reverse. So say there's a run and gun event that you have. So if you finish the best time with all the targets hit, and you finish first in that, that's how many points you get. You get 1 point. Second place gets 2 points, 3 points, and so on and so on. In the end, the team with the lowest amount of points wins. So as we're going through this, now I wasn't there in 07, I was there in 08, so I got to experience the teams who are looking to our team for improving their team. So the only teams that were doing that were the teams that were comparable. They couldn't compete with us. Our team was just better, but they wanted to make their team as good as ours. So they were inquisitive, and they were talking, and they were humble.
Which you would think all of them would have been at that point.
They should be.
Because your life's on the line. It's not
this
isn't a sport.
Police should be like, I want to be that good. I want to see what they're doing. No. Resentment crowded in that middle group. The teams on the very bottom, who really were awful teams, they would come up and be inquisitive and want to learn and do things. But there was this huge middle group, and there's 30 teams. So probably 7 teams out of 30 were very inquisitive. The rest were resentful and like I can't believe this. That's not the way a profession like policing should ever work. Now I'm going back. This is 12 years, so I would hope that things would progress to where, okay, if there's a competition that involves police, that they should all be like, well, let's figure this out, because we should all be that good. But I'm still seeing people who are actively in policing who are not that way. So, and they're actually worse. So I've talked to different family members of police. I've offered free instruction for firearms to their family members. Nothing. I know a ton of other cops, a ton of other retired guys who run different combatives courses, train, do this, do that, the other thing, offer free training for police. The amount is minimal who actually take that. And
right.
It's a shame.
It is a shame.
So
it is, and it's an interesting thing to think about as well. I mean, I can remember, I think you told me a number at some point where you guys could run through one of those set up houses in one of those competitions in something like 6 seconds or 7 seconds.
Real houses. Our team in a real house.
A real house, as in like an active
job.
Right.
2,000 square foot house. We would completely clear in 8 to 12 seconds at the most.
That's amazing.
Completely clear. Now that is a team of 10 to 12 guys going through that house, securing the people in it, and bringing them into the living area, which we usually do. Then the detectives would come in and we would leave. So we would secure the house, make it safe, tell the detectives it's all clear. They come in and we leave. So in that amount of time, I got to see again and again and again and again the animals that humans are, and at the same level as dogs, literally. When a human and a dog is confronted by something like a SWAT team coming into their house and moving so quickly and very efficiently, they completely freeze. It's like the whole deer in the headlights. It's exactly that. I've looked in countless eyes where the eyes are just massive, where all I had to do was go up to somebody and put my hand on their shoulder and guide them down and talk to them like I'm talking to you now. There's no yelling police down. None. That creates chaos.
Right.
And everybody's freaking out. It gives them time to think. We worked to the point where we didn't want to give them time to think. Down on the ground, once they're down on the ground, I put the zip ties on them, and it was over that easy. The dogs, the big dogs back then, we were doing from 96 to 2000. They were the busiest years I had, and really for the team, we were doing over 60 jobs a year as a part-time team through those 5 years, 60, 96, 7, 8, 9, 10, yeah. So that's all. It was a ridiculous amount of jobs to be doing, and the dogs that we saw were either pit bulls or Rottweilers during that time. They were the big bad dogs, and along with big bad guys who would say they're never taking me alive. They'd end up. The dogs would most assuredly see us, shit, and run away. So as we were going through the house, we would get to the dog, get them into a bathroom, a closet, whatever, and lock the door. And the dog was still that afraid where we could guide them into a room, lock the door, and then they were good. So a couple seconds when their head comes together, they're in that room flipping out because that's what they do. But now they're in a room by themselves. They're not overwhelmed. They can think. So when you're overwhelmed and you can't think, everything just goes to shit.
Right. Now, is that with, like, I don't know if this is like a standard procedure, but is there concussives involved on your way through, on your way in?
Later in the team, when I was back on the team in 06 to 09, we used some flashbangs here and there, but it was still minimal use. Early, all when we were doing the most jobs we ever did, never.
Right.
Never needed them.
It seems to me that in a time frame like you established, right? 10, let's call it 20 seconds. You're going through a house. If you were a criminal and you were in that house and you realized what was happening, half of that time is gone by the time you even put 2 and 2 together. Mm-hmm. I mean, what would be the use for the concussives and all the smoke and mirrors of everything? Right. It really, an efficient team with efficient people, mm-hmm. It's amazing what you can do. Yeah. And it's funny because you see the downplaying of the police and partners in the news and in everywhere. Everywhere you look, mm-hmm. It's either downplayed or degraded to basically subhuman levels. I mean, the stuff that you see happen to police in the streets in these major cities today is despicable. I mean, there's absolutely no excuse for it. I'm not an angel. 90% of us aren't angels. Mm-hmm. But I have the utmost respect for the police department and everything that goes into that, whether it be SWAT or National Guard, or the job that we ask you to do is damn near impossible to do right. And I think that people need to take that back into accountability, that what is a good police officer?
A good police officer is humble, well trained, on their own time and dime, educated on their laws, their local ordinances, their case law, and well viewed by their community. They serve their community well.
And do you agree that should be from that community, or at least something similar?
Where
in the community that you're policing, you should at least have some sort of knowledge of that community.
It's critical.
You see these situations pop up, like our hometown in New Gretna, where they move in a trooper barracks right into the main part of that town.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost to the point now where it's a nuisance,
Mm-hmm.
because they're training kids on those main roads. And this is a sleepy little, how many people live in New Gretna? 500 people.
Who knows?
You know what I mean? And these guys are out there pulling people over left and right. And that's where that bad reputation comes from, is these aren't even township cops. These are guys from somewhere in North Jersey that found a barracks that would take them, that was hiring that. And suddenly you're judge, jury, and executioner in this sleepy little town that you had no business being in the first place. I think you're seeing more and more of that now. And that's creating an even bigger divide.
Yeah. Well, cops should realize what separation does between themselves and the community. So here's what I mean separation. So first of all, you being in a car is a separation because you're in a car. And now I'll preface this with, cops are already separating themselves further because of today's atmosphere, because there's huge groups of people who literally hate them for no other reason other than that's what they've been taught. These people are taught to hate cops, and that's what they do. So the cops will separate themselves a little further, because now me as a cop, I have to be extra vigilant to understand who is this person coming closer to me, because going a few years back when the Philly cop was the attempted assassination on the Philly cop, that should have really woke cops up in cars, okay? Where, yes, you have to be more vigilant in the car and see who's around you, but we still have two LA cops sitting in a car, and a guy comes up and tries to assassinate them both. So where do you draw the line as a cop in a car and separation when you shouldn't be separated from your community? Because the closer you are with your community, the easier it is to work with your community, the more they trust you versus being in the car. So that means, like, what we would do, we would be out of our car and walk around, check homes, meet homeowners when we're checking homes, check businesses, meet business owners when you're checking businesses, and you establish that rapport with your community. So I would hope other towns, like, I don't know what each policy and procedure are in these towns. It breaks my heart to see cops sitting in a car and somebody run up and try to assassinate them. Like, how do we get away from that? How do we stop that? And community relations, that was a huge term throughout my career, and our department was really big on that. Every department should be really big on that. Not politics. Like, there's two separate things there, because, like I said earlier, politics have invaded police, where elected mayors of cities and towns and so forth have literally taken their police departments over, and the police department basically serves the mayor, because the mayor will appoint the chief that will agree with them most. And that's not the way policing works, because now you're putting a bias in there, and you can't have bias.
Well, and you really can't couple the police force with an agenda either, especially
No.
a political agenda.
Never.
You know, it will never ever work. But it's interesting that you emphasize community relations so much, because if you listen to guys like Jocko or a guy like Tim Kennedy, it's a couple people that people are familiar with. They talk a lot about counterinsurgency. And it's gotten to a point now where it seems like policing now is counterinsurgency, even here at home.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you were a cop in Portland or Baltimore or Chicago, New York, LA, Miami, you're going to deal with the fallout from this even, you know, for longer than most people imagine.
Mm-hmm.
You know, once the politicians close the door on this one and they move on to the next topic, you know, police are going to have to deal with the repercussions of the last 6 months for the next 6 years, at least.
Yeah.
If not more. And you're in a counterinsurgent style fight at that point, where you have almost a cult following of these people that will not ever like you or agree with you.
Correct.
And I think that a major problem in the country right now is that people don't know how to handle that situation. I think people don't know how to handle that situation at any level. If you walked into a gas station and the cashier didn't like you, it'll bother you all goddamn day, let alone if you were in a real tough situation. So how do you, in your time as a police officer, and with my experience of knowing you as long as I have, you've always done particularly well with high stress situations. I mean, I've watched you handle multiple of them. And how do you think you solve that problem? How do you solve the problem of having the biggest divide between the people and the police ever in the history of America?
First of all, time and patience, that above everything, because what is occurring now it's very evil, it's very ingrained, and it's a dehumanization of the police. There's a dehumanization of Trump supporters. When a group in society picks another group of people, whether it's for political reasons or religious reasons or your job, like a police officer, and effectively dehumanizes that group, that's like an end game, because where do you go from there? Like, what do you do to a person? Like, how do you deal with a person who is literally dehumanizing you, and whether they talk genocidal, whether, you know, they literally talk kill the cops, how do we go about correcting that? Because there's deep-seated evil that got that group to that level. Okay, like the character assassination, like I'm kind of going on tangents, but the character assassination of Trump has been so effective that people are willing to just overlook even one accomplishment he's made versus like a couple. Like,
right. And to be clear, I mean, you know, like you referenced, the dehumanization of Trump supporters. That's not a bias on our part, having, you know, I'm admitted, as both of us are, Trump supporters, but that's not a bias. That is the truth. That you don't see the right wing dehumanizing and pushing back on the left wing the way the left wing is on the right wing. It's staggering, the difference between the two.
I have a good example that I think is a good example. So you let me know what you think about this. So the right and the left need each other. You need each other.
Absolutely. I can speak to that.
You need to talk. And I was a liberal for most of my life. Okay. 2 years into Obama's first term, I was like, this guy's lying. And then I totally shifted gears and saw things from a different perspective. So that's, in a nutshell, that's kind of where I'm coming from there. So knowing that the left and the right have to talk to each other, because there's two different views there, and there has to be a compromise in the middle. That's how we've gotten along this long. And it never got personal. It was always, we're going to talk, we're going to get from point A to point B through our talking, through our compromise, and everybody's going to be happy. So that's the way it worked. If conservatives didn't agree with certain things, and I'm going to say the LGBTQ plus, all those, that group, if you want to call it a group, okay, because they're individuals. So,
well, and I think that acronym was invented to throw a blanket over it.
Well, it wasn't even invented, because I'll go back to when I was young, when there was nothing, there were gay and lesbian people.
Right.
Okay, so there was nothing. So it has, since that time, decades, it has grown into this never-ending kind of thing with an infinity at the end. So there's no end to it. But it would have never gotten from gay and lesbian people to all of this if conservatives weren't like, whatever, man. You know, you do you. I'm going to do me. Leave me alone. And that's that. Like, conservatives have been turned into this evil thing. Like, they hate gays and they hate lesbians and trans and all this. And
right. But they saw the value in it. That's how it came to fruition.
That's not the case, because if that was the case, this would never occur. Correct?
Yeah, no doubt.
So,
and you know, I think that it goes both ways. I think that, you know, I think the left lets the right get away with a lot. You know, there's definitely, I mean, when you look at simple things that have been recently in the news, like fracking, for instance, there's a lot of those situations that the left says, all right, we can deal with this to get this, you know, and it does go back and forth.
Right.
But it's increasingly more drastic, the number of people on the left that have completely refused any kind of right-wing idea.
Yeah.
And what it's caused is for the people on the right to now refuse you.
Yes.
And I think that where we've gotten, how we've gotten to this volatile point in history is you finally hit the point where there's no more, that you can't blow into the balloon anymore. It's full, it's going to pop, you know, and nobody talking to each other, nobody listening to each other, nobody understanding that sometimes you're wrong.
Yeah.
I say things on this podcast that when I watch them later, I'm like, fuck. I say all the time, you know, but I know it. I know, like Henderson said to me, I think I said that Class 7 originated from A class. He said you were right, but not really, you know, and like corrected me, and I was like, I got that one wrong. It didn't make me not ever want to talk to Mark Henderson again.
Right.
You know, people have to find a way to get along. You know, it's. I was just in California for 2 weeks, so everything you just explained, I just watched firsthand, and the last place we went was San Francisco. So for 2 weeks, I had this big left-wing education leading all the way up to what I think is the hub of left-wing ideology is San Francisco. And I didn't like what I saw. You know, I think maybe 40% of the businesses were still open. There was homeless people that have literally moved into the cities and nobody's there to tell them to leave. People with millions of dollars invested into their homes have to step over sleeping homeless people to get into their cars. And it leads you to a few, you know, thought processes. It leads me to how do we get to this point? How is it that we can pay Tom Brady $100 million, but we can't take care of that guy? How is it that you can, you know, in the endless pursuit of equality, or, you know, the overreach that comes from that, they just signed a bill that states that as long as you're, what's it, a 10-year gap with a minimum age of 14 that you can have sex with a boy in California. This is how you get there. This is how these things happen. You just deemed statutory rape legal in the state of California, and I could show you the bill. So how did we get there? You know, that's what confuses me is you watch it and we answered it in the last 10 minutes, is the refusal to listen to each other. The left said, look, this guy's 24 years old and he's dating this 14-year-old dude, and dudes mature faster than chicks, and the age laws are fucked up, and I understand how it all got there. But nobody on the right was willing to say, hey man, I agree with you.
Yeah.
But it can't be 14 years old.
Yeah.
I mean, there needs to be checks and balances. The country got as far as it did through checks and balances. It's just now they've circumvented all of the ways around those checks and balances.
I think we've been bombarded so much that going to the I'm not listening and I'm not talking anymore, and it's gotten to that point, and that's a very, very dangerous point. We're at a potential very dangerous point in our history, because people will only take so much, and then where do you go if you're not going to listen to me, and if you're going to resort to violence, which both sides have. I have to say there's more violent, like conservatives aren't out in the cities tearing them up and looting and stealing and everything. It's a certain group of anarchists, neo-Marxists, people who want some sort of utopia, but they don't. There's no real solution. They're just they're destroying everything. There's no real solutions with anything, and that's not going to get us anywhere. It's only going to be worse. So.
No, and I think that there's so much evidence of all this. I mean, it doesn't matter what side you're on. The truth is the truth. And you can see it in these videos, where you see a group of maybe 500 people standing in front of a wall of riot shields. That should never happen. There should never be. That's not protesting. I'm sorry to break it to the left, but that's not protesting. Whenever the police officers are out there in helmets, riot shields, OC spray, nightsticks, and they got the National Guard and tanks behind them, that's not a protest, man. And I again, I just walked through San Francisco Airport, and they have a big mural painted in a reference to the governor from Sean Penn played him in the movie Milk. The guy that fought for, his name's on the tip of my tongue, Steve. Anyway, walking through there, it was somebody listening to this can post in the comments what the hell I'm talking about, or I will after this. But he fought for the gay movement in San Francisco. He was eventually shot and killed in a public office for fighting for. I'm not even sure what the correct term is for gay rights. And it breaks my heart to see like somebody so pure that had nothing but the best intentions was shot and killed. And why? Because you didn't agree. And this is where protests get. Protests lost their steam with people like Martin Luther King. The people who really understood how to change something the right way, not forcing it down somebody's throat, not because there's more of us and less of you. That's not protesting. Protesting is when you have something to say and you're saying it, and you refuse to stop saying it until people start listening. What you see today is an epic level of hysteria. People that will buy into shit that they have never, even for 10 minutes, looked into themselves. And it's a reason, as conservative as I am, I refuse to watch Fox News. I refuse to watch CNN. I refuse to watch any of the major media outlets because I know you're lying to me. It doesn't matter if you're lying to me and I agree with it, or it's still a lie. It's not the truth. And, I think people have a real gripe to be angry with police in the country. I think that there's a staggering amount of evidence that there's a lot more bad cops than originally were, guesstimated. And but that still the adage holds true that there's still a whole lot of good cops, and you can't demonize a whole group of people the same way the people that are sitting on the right are looking at these protesters and these anarchists and looters and rioters. We haven't dehumanized you yet. Right. But it's fucking rapidly getting there.
And we as a group, I believe most people that I know absolutely know that and don't want to do that, recognize that generalization is extremely dangerous. Like okay, there's a bad cop, so they're all bad. You know that we can't do that. We have to recognize the issues, and move forward with that time and patience, and fix it, because it's completely fixable. Get politics out of policing. The injection of political beliefs into policing, like having the Portland police stand down during a riot when it's already been clearly demonstrated in other cities where the police were actively enforcing the laws and went out and arrested people who violated those laws, don't have protests anymore. But in the cities where the police are shackled, they continue on and on and on, and more damage, more damage, more damage. And somehow that's twisted into somebody else's fault other than who's actually allowing it to happen. Because the police are like, I was told to stand down, so I got to stand down. I got to keep my job. Listen, if you have any morals whatsoever as a cop, and that's your response, like any Portland police officer, and I'm hitting on Portland because that's pretty much where it's at right now. It's still in Seattle, it's all over, but let's stick with Portland. If that's what you say as a cop, you need to find another profession. You need to move on, or quit that job and go find a city where you can work for that you're supported, or a town, or what have you, because that's not your job. Your job is to be unbiased and stop lawbreakers. Enforce the laws. That's what you're supposed to do. Keep people safe. When you're told to stand down, then this crazy mob goes out there and destroys everything, and they are hurting people physically, hurting people, and you're not doing anything about it. But you're justifying that, and that's dangerous.
Well, and how does that get issued? I mean, does that come from the captain? Does that come
in
from
Portland,
the government?
specifically from the government, the mayor?
Right. So in what way does the mayor have power over a police department?
In every way. The mayor holds the purse strings of the police department. The mayor controls the budget that goes to the police department. The mayor controls the police chief in that police department. The Seattle police chief stepped down because she couldn't do that anymore. So she literally left.
Right.
So my hat's off to her, because she saw and this is sad too, because the only solution she saw was to leave. Like she can't fix it. That's how bad politics are affecting these riots right now. There is a good police officer who literally left because she could not fix it.
And is it fixing it, or is it not seeing a positive outcome? I mean, like, part of it is, to me, is when you see a situation like that, any action is going to be met with resistance as long as it's coming from someone with a badge. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter what they do. Mm-hmm. And the people in Portland put that on full display. Mm-hmm. They probably have one of the most, progressive mayors that ever lived.
Correct.
And they ran him out of town.
Yeah.
And he did everything they asked. Mm-hmm. And so if you're the police chief, are you going to stay? I mean, that guy bent over backwards for that mob.
I think that police chief is still there. I don't know. Like these are like unfolding as we watch, really. Right. Like at some point, people realize that there's no end. Like I give you this, I give you that, I give you this, I give you that, and you still want more. You want more. You want more. Like that's what I said before. Like there's no solution. There's just gimme, gimme, gimme.
Well, and to me, somebody who really doesn't have a dog in this fight. I don't have a horse in the race. I don't go out of my way to break any laws, and I don't intend to. So I really could care less. Mm-hmm. But when I look at this, what is it that you're exactly pushing back against? If you're in the street and you're chanting defund the police, I would like to know why. And I think that's what the movement is missing. Their leaders are hateful. Their leaders don't know how to speak. They lack They lack the ability to have a conversation, which I think is a very basic human action. And I've yet to even understand what it is you would like to see defunded and why. I mean, what is it that you disagree with the law? Are you mad at police because they arrested you? Did you break a law? You know, I'm pretty sure that comes with getting arrested. So if you're upset with law, I can understand that. If you're upset with legislation, but you're just upset with people and the uniform that they wear, and it's disgusting. You know what goes on. I don't understand how people still to this day are applying to police academies. There's not a bone in my body that's not attached to some sort of patriotism, and I think that if you're a police officer, you are right up there with a service member or somebody from the military, or everybody's got a job to do. That one is a good one. That's a tough one. You get paid well and it's a good job and there's benefits and there's all that. But at the end of the day, I don't care if your paycheck was enormous or minimal. Nobody wants to have their life on the line. And I don't understand where we're going with this conversation with these people that want to see the police defunded. There's got to be a goal, an end to it, or do you just want to riot? There needs to be an answer.
I'd love the answer myself too, but nobody's giving any answers. Now we get back to generalizations. It's all a big generalization. Minneapolis, where they're literally breaking the police department up, crime goes through the roof, and now the government is like, well, the police better do something about this. Like, wait a minute, what? Like, you can't have your cake and eat it too. It just doesn't work that way. The police are there for a purpose. The police need more money, more training, more incentives, because the people complaining about all this are taking an agenda that is a completely twisted statistic of a so-called racial war, systemic racial bias within the police force, where white cops are killing black people, and looking at statistics that it's such a small amount where more white people are killed by police. When you look at the numbers, nothing jives. So this whole thing is just completely taken out of context. But it has been taken out of context, and they're running with it, and they're allowed to run with it, and it's growing. So how do we stop it?
Well, and I think too that trails back to the lack of accountability. Like when the kid Kyle brought that AR-15 to Minneapolis, he was immediately deemed a white supremacist. Immediately. Yeah. And I don't see it.
That was a complete lie, because there's nothing that justifies that whatsoever.
No, and the famous photo is him blowing the white guy's arm off.
Yeah.
It's not, I don't understand how the misinformation has gone unpunished. I've understood propaganda my whole life. That makes sense. That's, when you look at World War II or World War I and the propaganda and the big media movement, that had purpose to it. We were fighting the Nazis, but now where propaganda's out the window, they're into full-blown fairy tale. I mean, and it's not just on the left, it's on the right, it's in the middle, it's everywhere, where people are just okay and comfortable with misinformation, with blatant lies. I mean, how much of it is how much of it is the responsibility of the people versus how much is it the responsibility of the media to clean up their act and tell you the truth?
Well, obviously the media has no responsibility whatsoever. They're owned by a few billionaires, and they're doing the billionaires' bidding. Just like a police department is run by the mayor, and so the police department does the mayor's bidding. A news outlet is run by a billionaire, and that news outlet is doing that billionaire's bidding. That's just the way it is right now. And that is extremely dangerous, because the billionaires want to make more money, and they're making more money. While we're all distracted down here, And our big question is, well, you know what? My couch and my living room and everything is awfully comfortable. If I go stand up for something, I may lose my comfort. So risk and reward, people don't want to take that risk because now they're seeing people literally being killed. So is that worth it? People aren't thinking about consequences, or they're thinking like the comfortable, complacent people are like, I don't want to risk my comfort. And then the people who are killing people are like, well, I'm not thinking about the consequences. Like Kyle did not think about the consequences, what he could get involved with during that day. He chose to go help out and protect the business. People need to think about consequences. We need to think more about what we're doing with our lives in order to maybe make some corrections. Is it worth losing my comfort for a cause that might help bring about something that's going to improve our situation? Or am I not going to think about consequences and kill people? Because there's like two different things going on right now, and they're aggravating each other instead of helping each other, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. And I think that people have been subjected to that for a long, long time.
Mm-hmm.
That's the truth of it. And like, I hate to, you use the generalization here. I'm going to use one, but you see this shift happen, and I sit back and I think to myself, there's so many people that align with left-thinking ideologies and so many people that align themselves with right-thinking ideologies. And I think if you got them all in a room, you would agree on 80% of shit.
Mm-hmm.
It's 20% of shit that people can't accept.
Right.
And it blows me away that we can agree on just about everything. Mm-hmm. And if you never told me that you were going to vote for Joe Biden, if I never told you that I was going to vote for Donald Trump, mm-hmm. and we never discussed this, we could be the best of friends.
True.
How do you allow that small amount of information to destroy and diminish everything that you wish to achieve? I mean, mm-hmm. and that's exactly what's going on at every level of the world right now, from us sitting here right now mm-hmm. to the White House. It's that way all the way through. And it's ridiculous. It is. It's absolutely ridiculous the way people approach things, the way they think about things, with total disregard for anybody other than themselves. Mm-hmm. And it's insane, because the reason, what's going on right now is complex beyond imagination. Mm-hmm. I mean, we're particularly talking about police, but there are so many different things involved right now, so many different agencies involved right now. When you look at something like Joe Biden makes the statement that he doesn't want to defund the police, he wants to give them more funding. They need a psychiatrist or a psychologist in the car with them to help talk down these incredibly enraged criminals. And mm-hmm. have you ever been told to calm down when you're mad? It doesn't work.
Yeah.
And
be somehow mentally disturbed on top of that.
Yeah.
Which means you just don't listen. Like, I've dealt physically with people like that, and there's no type of communication in that moment that will ever work. The only thing you have to do is to subdue them to the point where they're not going to hurt themselves or anyone else, and that takes physical force.
Right. An overwhelming force.
That's it.
Yeah.
So to think that some type of social worker or psychologist or whatever you're saying is going to actually make that scenario better is, in my opinion, complete fantasy land. Because in no situation that I was ever involved in personally would that have ever worked. Ever.
Right. If anything, I think that if you were to try to agree with the whole defund the police movement, The one thing that I could agree on with them is that the brutality aspect is real, and exactly how we describe, the only way to fix that situation is an overwhelming force. You're not going to talk that guy off the ledge. You got to put him down and make him understand what he did wrong. There's a fine line between that and beating somebody's ass. And I think that the difficult part there, like I said, it's a complex thing, is how do you teach people to differentiate? Some people are just good at it. There's everybody knows that guy. A fight breaks out, and that guy that can just get in the middle of it, and he'll stop it, everybody stops, right? Everybody. If I tried to get in the middle, somehow I'd end up involved. You know what I mean? There's some people that can just do that, and there's some people who can't, and I think that there's no way to predict what somebody's going to do in a bad spot. And it seems like you said, where it's a revolving door of correcting problems. And to bring this all the way back to where we started, that's where humility comes in. I think that if every time one of these videos came out of a cop that fucked up, he got a little too crazy in a bad spot, and he was on video, and now he's on CNN or now he's on Fox News. Okay, if that cop would learn how to, the next morning when there's 20,000 people trying to ask him what the hell happened, and he just learned how to say, I'm really sorry. This is exactly what happened. I misread the situation. I'm incredibly sorry for all involved, and we're going to go back and we're going to look at this and we're going to fix this, and this isn't going to happen. I think we would be at such a de-escalated point. We would be at such it would be a fraction of the craziness you see right now. But there's no accountability, there's no humility, and the police department, to their credit, or they back up their officers. And there has never been a leader in the history of the world that was considered a good one that didn't back up his people. Okay, that's what they have to do. The problem is, if you're going to expect the police to come out and own their mistake and show some humility and be humble and talk to you like a person, then you have to learn how to talk to them like a person. If you showed up to my front door tonight and arrested me for something, I have to learn that I did something wrong. That's why I'm meeting you, And so once we establish what that thing is,
personal responsibility,
right, then we can go from there. But where we live in this society where suddenly police are wrong from Jump Street, how do you ever progress? You can't. Maybe I was wrong and maybe you were right, or maybe you were wrong and I was right, but you can never figure that out. Walking into a problem with no humility and no accountability on either front, it's impossible.
Personal responsibility works across the board on everyone. Everyone has to accept their own personal responsibility, whether you're a police officer, civilian, no matter what. Any mistakes I made throughout my career, I was like, sorry, I messed up. And my bosses were like, what do you want us to do now? Like, we were ready for you to fight us and do this, that. Nope, I screwed up. I'm going to try harder and make it better. Train me, do whatever, those are things that people need to do and need to understand to do. But that's gone now. Like, social media has driven us to a place that's extremely dangerous. It has brought us to a place where I can type whatever I want and face no consequences whatsoever. I have no personal responsibility whatsoever. I can do whatever I want. There are active cops right now that I have warned about posting a political bias, whatever it is. You shouldn't do that. That's not you. As a cop, you're unbiased. That's what you have to be. Like, I never talked about my politics when I worked. There's really only two guys who knew my political beliefs, because we just didn't talk about it. That wasn't part of the job. Today, it's like the whole job. And for a police officer to post any type of political bias, right or left, or middle, or what have you, on the internet is incredibly foolish. It's something that should never, ever be done. That's not their job. And don't tell me, well, I'm on my own time, I'm doing what I want. Guess what? That's not. You're always, when you're a cop, when I was a cop, I was always a cop. It just, that's what happens. Because if something goes down, there's differences in civilian life. So in New Jersey, if somebody attacks me, I'm responsible to defend myself if that attack is unlawful and I can't retreat. So if I can retreat, I got to run away. That's what I can't defend myself because that's the law. Police don't have that. Their responsibility is to stand fast and even go further to stop that illegal activity. So how can you do any of this correctly if you're biased, whether you're on duty or off duty? It doesn't work. That's politics infecting police, and it's very, very bad.
Right, and you'll hear the argument that I don't allow those biases in. I don't treat people any differently. Or the famous one, I don't see color, right? And I'll be the first one to object. I mean, I don't have a racist bone in my body. I don't have a prejudice. I don't agree with any of that. My best friend growing up was a black guy, and I don't subject myself to that style of thinking generally across all ideals. Mm-hmm. But I won't pretend that there's not a bias. Mm-hmm. That there's not, and it's force fed to you from the time you're a baby. Mm-hmm. Whether you were raised by the most racist people on planet Earth, mm-hmm. or if you were raised by the most progressive people on planet Earth, it's still emphasizing the idea. Mm-hmm. And there's no way to not receive the idea. Mm-hmm. You can use it for a positive or a negative. People could say, oh, well, Boomer's this racist fucking guy. No, but the stereotypes that have been branded into your brain since you're a child, mm-hmm. you're not going to just suddenly overnight forget them, right. And that's where our, some of the stuff we touched on with training comes into play, mm-hmm. where if you are well-trained, well-versed, and good at your job as a police officer, you can be the most biased person in the world. You know that you're doing a job, mm-hmm. And I think that it's not about supervising them. That's the thing that it makes me cringe when I hear them say we're going to put these social workers in the car with the police officers. Mm-hmm. That is going to make that job so incredibly hard to do. Mm-hmm. And luckily they thought that this was going to happen with the body cameras, and it didn't. Mm-hmm. But feeling like you have somebody looking over your shoulder all the time stops you from being able to do your job. There might be something that I do to get a starter out that I don't want the customer to see, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And if he's there, I'm not going to be able to do that. Therefore, I'm going to do it some fucked up way, yeah. And it goes that way to everything that everybody does in life. And it's especially important to a job like policing. Mm-hmm. I mean, you can't put these people in the car and have them ride around with you and police you. You got to rely on the training of your officers and the ability of your leadership to push these people to do the right thing.
If you're training them, and that's the problem we have today, that the police are just not trained. The police academy, going through the police academy and then going out on the road, thinking you are going to be an effective officer is just, that's fantasy land, because you have your use of force continuum where you have your authority, and most cops believe that just that them speaking alone will present their authority to people, and they're all just going to do what they're told. Well, okay, the majority will, but it starts breaking down from the ones who don't, because then you have if you have some sort of baton or your spray or your taser and then your gun, but you've never been punched in the face in your life. You have zero fight training, and I say that from the police academy, because if you've gone through a police academy and you get some sort of pressure point crap, that's not any type of physical training. So you have nothing, and now your spray fails, your voice fails. Okay, they're not listening to you. Your spray fails because they're still fighting, and you just sprayed them, and now you're breathing it in too. Now your taser fails because you either missed or a prong didn't hit or whatever. That's gone. The only thing you have left is your gun, and that's where we see justified shootings, but they're heartbreaking because it's something that if that officer was trained in some sort of combative, whether it's jujitsu's not the end all be all, but you're going to get like 80%.
Well, and hang on for a second, because no, it's not the end all be all. But if you know jujitsu and I don't, it is the end all be all.
Well, a little guy like me can tie a person up until help can get there, and we can be effective and get that person subdued, arrested, and brought to the station and where it works.
And it goes a little deeper than that, like the situation that you just described, right? A police officer goes through his checklist. Okay, he uses his spray, he uses his taser, he tries using his hands, he's getting beat, so he's back to gun. Why is it that they fold to the gun so fast? And I think it's, if you ask me, that it comes directly from their failure to deal with the pressure of that situation and the fear of everything that has been taught to you, right? If you can't lose this fight, they're going to kill you, right? Well, putting that in somebody's head, now your taser didn't work, your spray didn't work, you punched him, he's still conscious and coming at you, you're going to start looking for that gun. If you've ever been in a fight or two, you know, like I've been in my fair share of fights. I don't get excited for it anymore. You know, if anything, I'm tired of it. I don't want to deal with this shit anymore. You get these new kids, these young kids. You know, when we used to go to the bar, you always knew the just turned 21 crowd just walked in. Those kids panic. You hit a kid like that and you watch it. I mean, their facial expression changes. They start looking. They're in a fight with you, standing in front of you, and they're looking for their friends. Yeah. You know, they are looking for that gun. You know, and you can't have these new kids wearing badges. You got to get. You know, did that come from, like you said, in the 90s there when they started hiring the minority and the women into, you know, equalizing the workforce? Did that usher in this new, you got to be squeaky clean to get a police job?
It's not. I mean, that's not even the case. So you go back to the early 90s with affirmative action, because now you need to put so many African Americans, Asians, women in the workforce, in the police, into law enforcement. And they weren't. I won't generalize. Some of them might have scored high, but
you weren't getting the pick of the litter.
You're not. And now, you know, people want the best of the best to be police officers, but affirmative action is working against that because you're looking to get a type of a person, whether it's by race or by sex or what have you, versus what their performance is, whether it's physical and mental and psychological. You're not getting that because now you're just filling spots because, well, we need an African American here, we need a female here, and it didn't matter where they scored on the test. So that's a problem. That gets into hiring standards. So you're lowering your hiring standards. So it's not the pick of the litter anymore. And now you get as time goes on to today, where hiring standards have been lowered to such an extent that people who have been arrested in the past, if it's a minor offense, okay, they're still good. That's still a good candidate. I mean, not when I was hired, no dice. Like, if you were ever arrested in your life, don't even try to apply. It just doesn't work that way. So hiring standards have degraded to a point that's pitiful, just to get minorities into a position and lower the standards is like, seriously ask a community, is that what you want? Like, is that what you really want? Do you want a person who is lesser qualified, but they're this or they're that. Does that make sense?
Right. And it seems like exactly what you just said. If it was received by somebody on a left-leaning post, they'll say to you, well, that's racist, right? Okay, let's break it down. Is it racist? To me, it's simple math. If I have to hire 20 officers this week, right, and I want 20 of the best officers, obviously I don't want to hire chumps, right? But out of the 20, I got to hire 10 African Americans, 3 Mexican Americans, and 3 Asian Americans. And unfortunately, the top 20 was all the white guys. Does that make me racist because I wanted to hire 20 of the white guys, or because I hired 20 of the best guys? See, when you start to force them to do that, you lose so much of your prowess. I mean, you can't look at a hiring standard and ever factor in race. It has nothing to do with anything, and I understand that racism exists. I understand that racism existed in this country in a major way, but I don't see it anymore. I mean, I don't. I understand the thought process of systemic racism. I do. But what I don't understand is the thought process of applying it to absolutely everything, because it's not. They want to. The left wants to deem Trump a white supremacist. They're trying in the worst way. They have not succeeded. There's no reason to believe that he even is a little bit racist. They reach for the stars. I mean, on that debate where he refused to say anything about white supremacy, to me, his answer was fueled specifically by anything he would have said, you would have turned around. So he said something in a way that spoke to the American people, not the media. And they called it a dog whistle. They called it, a call to arms to all of his white supremacist followers. And what they're talking about is people like you and me who are tired of seeing what the left has not only allowed to go on, but has boosted so that it could go on, has funded so that it could go on. And I just don't understand how the same people that make those types of decisions, like you see in Portland or any major city that's run by a Democratic mayor, unfortunately, they're the ones that are telling you who to hire to be a police officer. And I can't wrap my head around that. I can't see the. I just watched not to rip somebody else's work, but I just watched a podcast recently with Joe Rogan and I do believe it was Tim Kennedy. And they were talking about how the you know the acronym better than I do, the LGBTQ community has now infiltrated the Navy SEALs. And I can see how that would be a wonderful victory for that community. I do. I think that that's fantastic. I know a couple gay people, and most of them, if not all of them, are far more physically fit than I am, can definitely run a lot further than I can, and if trained, could shoot just as good as I can, could be every bit of the Navy SEAL that I could be. So what the fuck difference does that make?
Right.
But they've infiltrated the vocabulary of the Navy SEALs. They can no longer say he. They have to say them. They can't, because it'll offend somebody who doesn't align with that gender, and if you assumed that they were this gender or that gender. And it's crazy to me to see this go on. And even in areas like the Navy SEALs, where I think if you took a poll across America, it would be 100% do you have confidence in the Navy SEALs. I mean, just look at some of the shit that these badasses do. And I can't for the life of me fathom that these poor bastards can't say he or she or, it's got to, at some point, the left has to stop with the ideology that the right won't listen and be thankful for what the right has allowed to go on in your tirade of pushback against the right. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous.
Well, I would like to see some sort of solution and some sort of end game, but I've never seen it. And I don't think we ever will. So I personally view that as a problem, because we should be going through life with clear solutions and clear goals. But there's not. They're just not put forth. I don't know the answer to that.
It's dangerous. It's dangerous.
It's more than dangerous, because there are like literally monsters in the shadows just waiting. And when the real monsters come out, all the people who have been pushing so hard for whatever they're pushing for, because we don't know, are going to be thinking about, like, what did we do?
Well, and I think if it needs it, the way this looks to me is, I look back to when I was a kid and I watched the towers come down on 9/11 on TV, the way probably 99% of America did. And I can recall not so much the imagery of the day, but the feeling of the day. You know, I look at events in history, and you sometimes can't stamp where they were, or, you know, there's always, you know, people say, oh, you know, that bombing, that they can't put it together, but they remember exactly how they felt about it. Mm-hmm. And there was something that Kamala Harris said on stage during a debate for the DNC where the moderator specifically asks, I mean, do you condone, you know, inmates, felons, rapists, murderers, people like the Boston bomber? Do you condone them getting the right to vote? And she says, I think we have to have the conversation. I mean, is that how far gone we are? You know, like, it's not that I don't hear what you're saying. Mm-hmm. It's not that people can't. I think the message there, if you were on the left, isn't that she thinks that the Boston Marathon bomber should vote Donald Trump out of office. Mm-hmm. I think what she's saying is somebody who had made mistakes in their life should have an opportunity to redeem themselves. But the word choice, the motive, and the constant smoke and mirrors of what's truth and what's not, mm-hmm. has led the civilian population to be incredibly misinformed, incredibly confused. Mm-hmm. Like, spin it the other way. How many Trump supporters watch that video and now believe that Kamala Harris wants the Boston Marathon bomber to vote? That's obviously not what she was saying. At least I would hope not. Yeah. Is what she was trying to say. But it can't go on. I think people need to be more vigilant in finding the truth, and I think that people need to be more understanding of an opposing theory. Mm-hmm. You know, and I think that is the solution.
Well, then, with that specific topic, where is the journalist out there that is going to specifically address that question to her? Did you actually mean that you want the Boston Marathon?
He's in one of Hillary Clinton's Ubers. Dude, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. That's the new, and that's one good thing that's come of all this craziness is the hilarious conspiracy theories that Hillary Clinton has Ubers that pick these people up that go to these, you know, they live in Washington, D.C., and they take an Uber to work every day, and the Uber just takes them and they never see the Uber or that person again.
Oh my God.
Or, you know, like, or that Ellen DeGeneres is eating people. You know, I
haven't even heard them.
I can't help but laugh. I can't help but laugh. Like this, you found two spots where either people have totally written off what's happening and they're just opting out and they're doing this. We're going to just make fun of everything and mm-hmm. keep it light and be happy. Yeah. And then you have the other side where I think people like us sit and lose sleep over the shit, you know, and I think truthfully that the solution would be a common understanding. I mean, just mm-hmm. people understanding each other. That needs to happen again. This whole, you know, I don't like. I guess maybe because I was around mm-hmm. for September 11th, and I think about this. How many of those protesters are young kids? Probably a lot of them.
A ton.
I mean, and I don't know. It's more of those generalizations.
You can see by the mugshots.
Yeah, they look like young kids.
Young white kids.
Yeah, most of them, which is pretty weird, but we won't even touch on that.
Okay, back to topic.
Because I have no explanation for it. I don't know if they're only arresting white people. That seems pretty racist.
It does.
But I think that these young kids, how could you have a sense of patriotism? How could you really understand what it means to be an American? You know, my grandfathers were very hardworking, blue-collar individuals. Mm-hmm. My parents were hardworking, blue-collar individuals. I consider myself one, but it wasn't something that they were able to teach me.
No.
This was something that I watched and watched and watched, and I never knew any other way. I never, if my old man wanted to go boat racing, the common theory was that we were rich because we had a race boat. No, I watched him break his ass and build that boat. I don't think you're seeing that anymore. I don't think that the American dream is the same dream. And I think that there's a change happening where you're watching these young kids who are mad at patriotism.
Yeah.
And I was in California wearing a silent majority shirt. It just simply says silent majority with an American flag on it. I could be a silent majority for Biden or Trump or any fucking buddy I want.
Right.
But since it had an American flag on it, since it was green and looked kind of military-ish, all these Biden supporters picked me out of a crowd. And they start screaming at me, Biden 2020, Biden 2020. And I couldn't help but laugh. You're mad at me. And the only thing that you found to be mad at me about was the fact that I had an American flag on my T-shirt. So I probably was voting for Trump. If that doesn't send a message, I mean, you don't like the American flag anymore? You don't like that? There was these young kids out in Santa Barbara who were mad at my free as fuck T-shirt. You don't like being free?
Yeah.
Like, what are you really mad at? Do you really not like this place? Do you really not like America?
At least what I gather from their perceived hatred of the flag and the burning the flag, that is symbolism to them that America is corrupt. And I'm sure everybody who we sit down is going to say, yeah, it's fucking corrupt, no doubt. But it's all twisted. But that hatred and disrespect that we see of the flag and the burning of the flag to them is symbolism of this corrupt thing needs to be burnt down and just wrecked and start over again. Where we see the flag as something to rise up to. It represents the greatest country in the world that we see, that we should all not break it down but build it up. So there's two opposing views right there that are both kind of right, but what's a better way to do it?
Well, and we all know how it got this way, but if that's your thought process, then why aren't you voting for Trump? I believe his slogan in 2016 was, "We're going to drain the swamp." I think that he was literally running for president to oppose corruption. Yeah. And here you are, burning the flag of a corrupt nation.
And here's a specific point to, let's say, trustworthiness of government. Okay, so the left has obviously chosen Biden and Harris for their ticket to go against Trump and Pence. So something that I view personally important is before you can represent yourself, your house should be clean. Okay. Now, if I'm going to look at the Democratic House, there is nothing clean about it. Bernie Sanders was literally fucked over 2 elections in a row, and yet are Bernie Sanders supporters going to go out and vote for Biden when their man was literally screwed over in 2016 and 2020, like big time, in front of everyone.
Yeah, blatantly.
Like, fix your house. Fix it.
Right.
Because you can't complain about this whole big house being corrupt when your house is a mess.
Right.
Like, that's what makes sense to me.
Well, I think that the tornado of misinformation that we spoke about has led the country to this comfortable point where they're okay with their side doing something wrong. Mm-hmm. And I don't agree with that.
Shouldn't.
I'm very harsh with Trump. Like after the debate, I was disgusted.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not just talking about his performance, but there's been things that I've been extremely tough on him about, and not like for real, not like I call him when I get home and be like, dude, you fucked up. But
I do.
I wish I could, but I look at Biden and Harris together. I look at Biden and Harris together, and I'm like, man, there is a mountain that's mounting, full of evidence that Kamala Harris sent plenty of innocent individuals to jail. They literally handpicked her to be Biden's female African American running mate, not the vice president. They needed a female African American running mate for Joe Biden.
She's not African American.
Well, whatever the fuck her 23andMe says, she locked up more African Americans than anybody in history. Yet, she's trying to win the black vote. I can't understand that. Joe Biden's running on the fact that he's a blue collar guy from Scranton, Ohio, right? Dude, you've spent 47 years in the United States government. You don't know what work is, you know. And
I'm not a millionaire.
Well, dude, it's fucking unbelievable. So then they want to look at Trump's. Why is he really in office? You know what's he really doing there? What are you trying to say? You think the guy's clocking this thing so that when he gets out, he can make a pile of money? When he gets out, he'll be 79 years old.
Yeah.
His kids are fine.
Yeah.
His kids are fine. He's obviously not worried about his taxes.
Right.
He's doing all right. You know, he's not working for anybody. And if you don't believe me, then look at what's gone on in the last 4 years with an objective eye. Okay? The guy that they impeached, that they actually did impeach in the House of Representatives, they did impeach President Donald J. Trump. Now, they impeached him because he abused his power. Okay? There's an investigation that's about to turn into an indictment on Joe Biden for threatening to fire people that didn't pay his son while he was the vice president. So this comfortable, it's okay if my side does something wrong, but if your side does something wrong, then it agrees with my friend group. And look at where we're at. We're back to this hunter-gatherer tribal mindset of I'm only safe with the people who agree with me.
Yeah, tribal's a good word to use because it's a bad thing, because we're continually isolating ourselves more and more into these tribes. And that's not America. It was never the America I grew up in. The America I grew up in was diverse and loving and helping and all that. It wasn't what we're seeing today. And there's a bunch of tribes out there, two really big ones, but there's a bunch of other tribes within them that are thickening their walls and throwing their defenses up and going nowhere positive. It's only a recipe for disaster.
Well, I think that if there was one hopeful sign, is that a lot of people are starting to look at the two parties. And I've heard recently a lot more people upset with the Republican Party. People that, without naming names, I don't want to light anybody up on the show, but they were historically red. They were historically right. They were historically conservative that are now starting to say, I know the Democrats are really bad, but it's not like the Republicans don't have some decay in them too, and I'm starting to see that what's coming of this is people are starting to pay a whole lot more attention to how our country's run. And I think that the craziness that's going on right now is absolutely being incited. It's being driven. It's not happening. It's not coming to fruition on its own, which leads me to believe that when those people no longer need this movement to serve their purpose and they walk away, it will go away with them. Right. And that's hopeful to me. To me, that would be means to an end. And I just hope that at the end of the day, the people can still get along. Because at the end of the day, I don't give a shit what tax bracket you're in, what color you are. We're all subjected to the same tyranny of the same people.
We're in the same country. So we have to make it the best. And with that being said, I'm very proud of my sister, Stacey Ferrari, running for council in Summers Point.
Oh, hell yeah.
So there's a person who wants to make a difference at the local political level. So you drive through Summers Point and you see her name all over the place.
Well, dude, maybe you can come back with Stacey.
I wish her well. Oh my gosh.
Maybe you can come back with Stacey and give me some things to work on. I'd like that.
That would be cool.
That'd be cool. Okay. And if we can do it before
future branch off.
Yeah, if we can do it obviously before the time's up, let's get her in and get some people familiar with her. That'd be awesome.
Oh, Very cool.
Wow. Well, hey, man, this might be just the first of many. So I just want to thank you for coming in.
Okay.
You know,
I really appreciate you having me. And I certainly appreciate our long-standing relationship. Lindsay, I love you.
I love you, Mom.
And we didn't even get into guns or anything, but
Not yet.
I'll leave you with something very simple. The best gun you could have is one that works when you need it. So that's it.
That's it. And I'd rather have one than be looking for one. That's it. The whole. I'd rather get caught with one than without one. Jesus Christ, man, are they making these laws tough now?
Yeah, well, that's something we can talk about, how New Jersey is and the laws and how you can live your life as safe as possible and think about consequences. Think about if you do involve yourself in something, like the man who was just killed by the so-called security guard at the protest. I believe it was Seattle. It could be Seattle or Portland. But there's incredible photographs of the man who was killed slapping the man who killed him, and then spraying mace in the direction, because it was so windy it just made a big cloud, spraying mace in the direction of the man who killed him while the man is literally shooting and killing him. So did either one of those two guys, like did the man with the gun actually go out that day with an intention to kill a right-wing person? Kill a person? Did the man who slapped the other man and sprayed pepper spray in his direction intend to be killed? Like, what are we thinking? That's the most important point that I'd like to make going forward.
I think it's been a really long time since people have had consequences. I think that's how we got where we are.
Yeah.
You know, I guess I was maybe 6th grade, 7th grade when MySpace came out. So what was that, a fucking really long time ago?
Mm-hmm.
So from then to now, I'm 26 years old now. Look at how much things have changed.
Mm-hmm.
Look at social media. Look at what you're able to do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, for you to reach, I look at one of my podcasts, right? I think, you know, if I generate 1,000 views,
Mm-hmm.
when, how, and where would you set up a time to go speak to 1,000 people
Mm-hmm.
if it weren't for social media?
Mm-hmm.
And there's nobody controlling social media, which is beautiful, but it's also very dangerous because it gave a lot of mentally ill people a way to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that mental illness is another gigantic problem in this country that has been capitalized on by pharmaceuticals, by politicians,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that the conversation of gun laws and gun safety and responsible gun ownership has been, I don't think it was coincidence that the conversation is coupled with the mental illness conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that situational awareness has to rise in this country. People need to understand that when you are walking around in Atlanta, in Chicago, in Portland, and you are wearing a Trump t-shirt, or you're driving a big pickup truck with big Trump flags hanging out the back of it, and you wind up in a crowd of people, and you now fear for your life, and you run a few people over, you put yourself there.
Mm-hmm.
As much as they threatened you, you threatened them. I mean, why were you there? Why were you, people need to start thinking before they act, and they need to start thinking before they speak.
Mm-hmm. Things
that I learned when I was 5 years old.
Yep.
It's not hard. It's just that I think the country needs a breather.
Yeah. And going back to just like the officer who takes that job without fully recognizing the consequences of all the people who love them, who live around them and with them. If someone takes their life because they failed to train, okay, you're gone, but now you have wreckage all around you because you failed to train. You failed to take an hour a day for 4 days a week to go and roll on the mats in jiu-jitsu. Because I'll tell you what, just doing that will increase your survivability 10-fold, 100-fold. like it's incredible because you get confidence. You understand situations that aren't planned, unlike other martial arts that you have the katas and you have movements that are planned that you have to know and you have to do, versus jiu-jitsu, you're learning moves to choke the person who is rolling with you, and that's your goal, or hurt their arm or leg or ankle or wrist, or lock them up so they hurt so much that they tap out. So it's that simple. Subdue somebody versus I'm a police officer, I got my belt on, I'm going out into the world to make a difference. And this world today is very dangerous, and you're not going to make a difference if you don't look at the world and train more on your own time and dime. And that's the big thing.
Yeah, the training aspect of everything needs to come full circle. It needs to be accepted. That's the hard part. I think that the police today have been pushed to a point where they're fed up. And I agree. Mm-hmm. I do. I agree. I've talked to quite a few police officers in the last 6 months, whether we ran into them in the boat or something like that. And I think that it's overwhelming, that to be a police officer, when you graduated from the academy, I highly doubt that anybody thought that this is what they were going to be doing.
Oh, hell no.
And they need to accept the help. They need to, go help themselves, and train and be better. And I think that we need to place a bit of responsibility, a bit of compassion, and a little bit of confidence in the American people to turn this thing around. Because just like there's a staggering amount of good cops for every bad cop that you see on the news, there's a great enormous difference between what the media is selling you the people of this country's like and what the people of this country are really like.
Right.
I was just out in the capital of the left wing in California, and it was nothing like what they tell you on the news.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie, Los Angeles was. You walk through Los Angeles, there is really needles all over the sidewalk. It is really a fucking dump.
It's awful.
But the rest of it isn't. But where do you see when they show you California? They don't show you San Diego. They don't show you Santa Barbara. They don't show you, they show you Los Angeles, San Francisco, Oakland. They're not showing you the beauty that state possesses. They're not showing you, dude, I'm telling you, I was formally blown away by how amazing California was. I honestly went out there with very, very low expectations, obviously being a conservative and especially right now, that would never, ever matter in the past. I would never go somewhere on vacation based on my political view.
Right.
But when you could possibly be walking into some bad situations, I was definitely aware of it. Yeah. And I was impressed. I was impressed by the demeanor of the people. I was impressed by the amount of freedoms that they enjoy that we absolutely do not enjoy out here.
Yeah.
I was impressed by, we went out on a boat to go whale watching, and we were out. And it took about 20 minutes, but then I noticed it was a gigantic catamaran, probably 95 feet in that area, and it was jet driven. Not because it was cost effective or it was easier to maintain or better on fuel, because they were afraid of the propellers hurting the wings. Wow. This is what comes with the left wing. This is what comes with the word liberal. Okay, is these kind-hearted folks that aren't out to this whole negative agenda that they're pushing you on Fox News. They're not these people. They're not screaming at police officers and they saw me in my Trump shirt so they tore me down. And for the most part, these were very, very caring, loving, chill, laid back individuals that enjoy living the way they live. Yeah. And I don't see why that can't be okay. I can't see why that can't be.
It is okay. And the biggest thing we all need to do as Americans, no matter what side, political, color, sex, what have you, I don't care what you are, when a violent group tears down and vandalizes a Teddy Roosevelt and an Abraham Lincoln statue, all Americans need to stand up and be like, that's enough.
It didn't even make sense.
That's enough. This needs to stop. Get those people off the streets now. That's it. That's the line, but I don't hear it. So
no, and I think because and like, back to that word complex. Everything that we're experiencing right now, I think, is in a complex multitude of issues that we hadn't been thinking about. Things that we either agreed to look the other way on, or, like for instance, when they want to tear down a George Washington statue, they're not tearing down the forefathers of the country. What they're doing is they're taking down a slave owner. Okay, it's just a different way of looking at it, right? And then people will defend the position. Okay, well, I'll give you a fact that not everybody knows. George Washington may have had a set of wooden teeth, but it was definitely not the ones he wore every day. The ones he wore every day were made from slaves' teeth. That's a true fact. You can look that up. So sometimes it's worth listening. Okay, sometimes it's worth saying, in this predominantly black area where they have this monument to George Washington, and it's insulting to the majority of the people in the community who are educated and know that maybe he wasn't the best person. Maybe there needs to be a bit of that. But when it comes to shit like Abraham Lincoln or churches or a governor that bent over backwards like he did in Portland, and next thing you know, you're throwing Molotov cocktails into the lobby of his apartment building.
Right.
America needs to stand up, and I don't give a shit what side you're on, because there's a lot of people on the left that would be standing right next to the right saying this is bullshit and it's got to stop. And it's coming. I think it's coming. There was a point in time where I thought a war was coming, but I don't think so anymore. I think it's coming around, and people are talking to people. They don't have us locked up in our houses anymore.
Well, yeah.
I laugh that
for now.
Yeah, I know. I laugh saying that because it's like, fuck, I said that, next week there'll be a lockdown.
Yeah.
But it's slowing down. The curve has been flattened for months and months and months. And people are talking to each other, and people are bullshitting with each other and realizing that they're not that far apart. They're not as far apart as the television wants to tell you are.
Talking and listening is the most important thing we can do to each other right now. And that needs to be pushed. Don't be complacent. Don't be comfortable. Go talk and listen. Don't just, oh my God, I'm not going to listen to a Trump supporter because I hate Orange Man. It's not that simple. Just we're Americans. Let's just talk to each other.
Or why can't we just be people? Like at the end of the day, being an American just means you live here.
Humble people.
Yeah, I mean, but I'm an American. I live in America. I'm a human being. You know what I mean? And so is everybody else. At some point, you gotta take a step back and realize when you're these videos, man. These videos of these people that are standing in front of these riot shields, the shit that they have said to these police officers, dude. I mean, you gotta dive a little bit. If you go on YouTube, you wind up on these mainstream clickbaity kind of videos, But if you really go and look at some of these guys that are just walking around videoing these protests, I wouldn't say what they're saying to these police officers.
Couldn't even imagine it.
To anybody.
Yeah.
I don't care who you are. I don't care how much I hate you. I wouldn't say the things that they're saying to these people. And to their credit, the cops are standing there with a straight face on.
Right.
I mean, I don't understand. It's got to give. It's got to give. But
yeah, it does.
Anyway, buddy, that was a long one. We'll log this one now. Let everybody go. That's been patiently sitting through this with us.
Wake up.
We got a couple more to do, people. We got a couple more to do. Steve-O's going to come back and give us some more information and insight on 2A, man, on your guns in your closet. What the hell you should be doing with them. How about that?
That would be good. Hopefully we didn't bore you enough you could get excited over that for the next one.
Oh, dude, get excited for the next one, because if we're doing guns, then we're doing guns, people. We are doing guns. Anyway, till next time, Steve-O, thank you, brother.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.